Hello, hello. Today's guest is Kate Spanos. Kate is a friend of mine who I met through Ralston College, a competitive and rigorous new college dedicated to reviving classical education. She, alongside myself and her husband, were part of the inaugural class. It should be noted that she spent the first half of that year pregnant with her third child, and, of course, spent the second half of that year raising said child with her other two children. That's not exactly an easy thing to do while earning an intensive master's degree. So I think I can speak for the entirety of the class when I say that she was an inspiration to us all, handling every bump in the road with an extraordinarily gracious demeanor, something I hope we all learned from. With all of that said, allons-y, and I hope you enjoy. It seems to me that nowadays, most young girls are, it's something like they're told their whole life that they've been encouraged to be a mother, but instead they haven't, and they're told that it's a bad thing to be encouraged to be a mother. It's maybe there's some sort of oppressive nature to it, something like that, some sort of, at least that connotation. But there do seem to be sects of our society that do encourage young girls to be mothers, and it seems like you've come from that type of environment.
Yeah, I think I probably had a unique upbringing. I know that, I had a really, my parents were wonderful, but I had, it was just kind of the assumption. No one ever told me, oh, you're going to be a mom. It was just kind of the cultural, my microculture was, oh yeah, this is just what you do. And it wasn't to the exclusion of other things necessarily. My mom did lots of things. She was a great mom. She never had a career per se in the traditional sense, but she did so many things that to me it wasn't, oh, this is like one or the other. It was just like something you're gonna do. Right. But I know that's not, and this was obviously like 20 years ago, like that's not necessarily what probably young women are facing today. And I do know that because culturally there is, having become a mother and like now experiencing what that's like in the culture outside of the microculture the little bubble I grew up in, it doesn't necessarily feel good. Like you get a lot of flack culturally.
For being a mother specifically.
I think so, yeah, because like whenever you have to fill out a job application or make up your resume, it's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a homemaker. And then, dismissed. Right. And so actually in the last resume that I was making up, I actually put out some of the things that I thought were relevant to the job that I was interested in. And I was like, actually, I do a lot of managing of people and organizational things. And like, I can put these on a resume because I do this every day. And so anyway, that's just, but culturally that is not something, I think it's very dismissed to be a mom and a homemaker.
There's a couple things that I want to pick up on. Yeah. But on that last bit about not getting much respect in society, I've noticed that with my mom too. Is that if she tells someone will ask her, what is it you do? And she'll say she spent the last 18 years of her life being a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. And there's almost always this, there's a step back where that's not something we take seriously. Yeah. What's a real job that you have? Yeah, right. I mean that seems like a terrible thing to put on anyone. I mean, it's a real job. Setting aside the quality of my mom as a mother, etc. Just in principle, it seems like that's a terrible thing to say to someone, and that's really discouraging to anyone who wants to stay home and be a mother. And shouldn't we be encouraging people to do that? I mean, that maybe we can have that debate of, is it good to be a stay-at-home mother? But
yeah, I think there's two things there that you're talking about, because on the one hand, like being a mom is so all-encompassing, it's so intense, like especially the early years, and then like as you go on, maybe it gets intense in different ways. My oldest son is 7, and he's not nearly as intense in like the personal care. Like he can dress himself, he can feed himself, he can and then I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so obviously their care is much more intense, like with the physical aspects. But then as my son gets older, the emotional aspects, the kind of shepherding and managing of those, the heart and the management, like the whatever they're thinking and feeling, that kind of thing becomes more intense. So yeah, like being a mom is super intense, and so to have it dismissed is really discouraging. But I think there's also something else, and I wish that we had a cultural language to do this, that like, this is what I'm doing now. Like, okay. I'm being a mom now. But even if you're a mom for 30 years and you have a lot of kids and it's, spread out. And when I say a mom, obviously you're a mom for the rest of like, once you're a mom, you're always a mom. Sure. But like, the bulk of the care when your youngest child leaves house, even if it's for a long time, that's still only a fraction of your life. And one of the things that I get passionate about, but I think is helping or wanting women to know that that's not all they're doing. That's not all they are, even though it's so intense, even if they're not getting to express all their other, you know, creativities or organizational skills or whatever it is. Like, I feel like you kind of have to hold on to that, like, oh, this is not all I am, especially in those early intense years. And I feel like there's no conversation. Hopefully we're having the conversation to allow that idea to arise. It's not either or. Like, you're a mom for this. It's so beautiful. It's so good. Being a mom is incredible. I think I wish there was a way to pay mothers to be mothers, because it's we should be paying the people that are taking care of our children really highly. Like, teachers should be the best paid of all of us.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that the people who are in terms of just investment in society.
Yeah,
there's probably no one who has a more important role in investing in society.
Talk about influence. Like, if you want to be an influencer, which is like the buzzword, like children. Like, I'm an influencer because I have 3 children and I'm shaping their life, and I don't think that can be underestimated. It's like, oh, this is just a kid. Like, no, like, this is a young adult that I'm forming here. Sure. And not that I'm forming, because they're already formed. It's like, I want to be careful with the language of like, oh, I'm imprinting them. I think there's also that you create the space for them to become the person that they're supposed to be.
Sure. Then how on earth do you do that without turning into some sort of mother who lets their kid run wild and do whatever the heck they want?
Yeah, sure.
I attended some neuroscience lecture a couple months ago, and it was a lecture on the neuroscience of creativity, and the lecturer said something along the lines of, if a kid throws paint on a wall, rather than looking at it as some sort of delinquency, look at it as an expression of creativity. And that seems like total nonsense. It seems like you should be training that kid to draw or paint or something like that, and then letting them express themselves.
I have a lot of thoughts. Go ahead. Did you have more?
It seems like tradition and practice and teaching are tools for that self-expression, but it has to be honed and it has to be disciplined first. Does that seem reasonable?
I think I'd actually push back on that. Yeah. So whether or not you think throwing paint on a wall is a legitimate form of self-expression, sure. I think especially with kids developmentally, they don't know how to use stuff. And like, whether maybe you have a special wall in your house that this is our painting wall, and you can throw stuff on it, you can put food on it, do whatever you want now. And at my house, that is not how it goes. But say hypothetically, you have this painting wall. It's actually really important for kids to be able to figure out the material.
Sure.
And so my sister-in-law, who's actually gone to school for art, and she is homeschooling her kids, but also taught my children art for a few years. That was really special because I also was like, well, like, what do we, shouldn't we like make them like we get so product oriented, especially with children, and I think that's actually wrong. And I think you might get a great painter in a family, maybe.
Okay.
There's genius there.
Sure.
But I think, does that mean that no other kid should paint? Like, no, I think you actually give all the kids, like, scissors, well, when they're old enough, and, like, paper. And, like, my kids just love cutting construction paper. Yeah. Tiny pieces. Does it drive me crazy? Yes. Does it teach them how to use scissors? Yeah. Is that a good thing? Yes, I'd rather them know how to use scissors than not. Giving them watercolors and being like, oh, this is what happens when you scrub the brush on the paper. It rips. Oh, what about when you use a gentle stroke? They have to figure out all these mediums. And so I think when we get these ideas of like, oh, well, we have to produce something and like I think there is a time for discipline. But early years, it is much more about discovery.
Sure. And
like knowing your materials. And I just think that's so great. And one of the benefits of like, an unstructured art environment, I suppose, for kids, even with instruments. Like in our own house, we have a couple instruments up on the wall over here, Sure. And then we just got a steel drum for Christmas. We asked for this, and our, my mother and father-in-law got this steel drum, and we leave it out, and my 1-year-old comes along and bangs on it. And we, she's banging out with something hard. Oh, it makes a different sound. Oh, we have the rubber mallets. And, just for them to discover that, I think is so beautiful. And so I think so much of what my job is to kind of curate a space of discovery. And I know that sounds like such a buzzword, but really, honestly, like we have tons of books, and it's not like the kids are going to read every one of them, but it's kind of building this like, oh,
I really noticed this with Evie last night, is that she couldn't read anything, but she could open up the books and pretend to read them and say, oh, I know some of these characters, and I know what the picture is, and she's sort of practicing the art of reading before she actually can do the micro routines of reading, and that's probably the precondition for getting comfortable with and developing the skill of reading or developing the skill of painting, etc., is
Yeah.
creating that space, allowing them to. I wonder, allowing them to practice that so they can develop. I think Apollo on top of Dionysus, if you're thinking philosophically, something like that. That you have the chaos in the music and the aesthetic down below, but then from that comes Apollo.
Yeah, I think there is definitely the time for discipline and the time to hone in those skills, and there are certain things like that require more discipline, I would say, like certain instruments or certain, art forms that are like, oh, like, yes, if you want to make this look better, you're going to have to work at it. And I think that is also really important. So I think you're right. But I don't think that's for the early age. I did want to circle back because I think I started saying like it's a hard balance, and now I'm trying to remember. So on the one hand, being a mom is discouraging to have like moms say, or to be told as a mom, like, or dismissed as a mom when they're doing such important work.
Sure.
But I think it's also, you kind of have to be careful and say like, oh, you're also a person. You're not just a mom. And so I think if I were speaking to young women today who are worried about that, it's like, no, you are who you are. And actually being a mother will form you. And if you submit to the process, if I can use that phrase, it will make you a better person. And I think if I can speak to my own personal experience, I know, when I got pregnant with my son, I was not excited about that initially. I was actually kind of scared, and all of the normal fears of like, what is this gonna do? This is totally unknown. Even I was the youngest in my family, so I didn't have any little siblings, but just that sense of this isn't what I planned. I didn't really want this. Like what? Like not that I didn't. It's not that I didn't want it. I just didn't want it now. It's like, oh, maybe later. And then I found one person, my sister, who I could talk to about that, and I could tell her. Oh, and then I felt guilty for feeling that way because in the culture that like, of course, like you're supposed to be happy about kids. Like that's another thing. Like, oh, if there is this culture of like around pregnancy. Once you get pregnant, like yay, like oh yay, I'm gonna have a kid. And my husband and I told him, and then I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm not super excited. And so I called my sister and I told her all the things I was feeling, and she's like, it's okay. Like she just created this space to say, hey, you don't have to be excited. It's okay. This is a normal feeling. And I think her normalizing that, and then she said, but when you're excited, I'll be here for you because I'm really happy for you. And that was just such a sweet thing to say, to let me be and like have those feelings and like experience them, and then to say like, oh, that's not how you'll always feel, and that's okay too. And when you're excited, I'm excited for you because this is actually a good thing. And so I'm so thankful for my sister who kind of had that, or gave me that experience.
So let me just see if I can summarize real quick exactly what you said and tell me what you think. So it seems like you once you had that pregnancy, then there are all these kinds of emotions of my life is forever changed as a consequence of this, and there is this humbling aspect. It seems to me that now I have to live for this other person too. And you said something about if you're a mother, you don't want to be pigeonholed to being just a mother.
Yes. I think that's probably the biggest fear, because it's like all of a sudden this is your stamp. It's like that's what you are.
Right.
Pigeonholed is a good word. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And it seems to go back to what we were saying earlier. It seems like that especially happens at first, and then you're kind of trying to retain your personhood as you're pushing them into their own personhood as well. Does that seem first reasonable?
I'm not sure that I would quite say it that way, because once I was able to accept the fact that I was pregnant, I did get excited, and I was like, okay, this is a gift. Like, okay, sure. This is beautiful. Is it scary? Yeah. Are we gonna make mistakes? Yeah. But like, is it a good thing ultimately? Yes, I do believe that. I do see that. I do think children are a gift. Even just the way they encounter the world is such a gift. And we could talk about that too.
Well, then there's two things going on where you want to be a mother and you want to enjoy everything of caring for someone and nurturing them and building them up into their own person. But there's also this sense where you do need to, at some point, learn to step back and
yes,
do the Pietà of offering your child up to the world on their own.
Yes. Okay, so that's really good. I think from the get-go, in motherhood, it is so important. Again, this is why it is so difficult to be a mom, because you have to kind of accept this new identity in some level, or at least this new phase of your life, but you can't make that be the defining factor, because you're not always going to have this like tiny child. And sure, it's super intense and super, but like your whole goal is to launch them into the world, is to launch this like, I don't like to say I'm raising children. It's like I'm raising small humans. Like I'm raising these little humans that are humans from the beginning, and they're going to be humans. And like I get to observe. So much of motherhood is just observing what's happening naturally. And I really think that, especially in our attention economy, paying attention to your kids, putting away the screen, the phone, all of that. Like people get so annoyed with me because I've turned off all of my notifications. And my mother especially, she's like, I can never reach you. I don't have a voicemail. And I turn off the note. The only thing I have on my phone is my ringer. And I usually have that on vibrate. So like if something really needs to get through, I usually get it. But I don't have those notifications because I want that to be a tool that I can use, not something that's always like, oh yeah.
So
that's taking me away from my kids. And I think one of the most special things that and I go through phases where I do this more or less. Like sometimes I'm just so busy I like forget. But then most recently, even the last couple of days, I've just been sitting and watching my 1-year-old. Yeah. Just like watching. What is she doing? How does she encounter the world? What is this? And that's such a beautiful thing. Not just for her sake. Like yes, it's giving her a sense of, oh, mom's looking at me. Like, oh, I think that is important for her.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also important for me just to be like, oh right. Like all the things that I'm so worried about controlling and making happen are like, there they are. They're over there, and like behold the human, behold the man. Like here it is, this human. But truly, this person. Go ahead.
One thing that I was coming back from Mexico. And I was flying into Dallas. I had a layover there, and I was kind of sitting around waiting on my flight, and I saw this one family. A little girl played with her mom, and it was quite remarkable because the mom was actually willing to chase the kid around in an airport, and that was rare.
Yeah. Usually it's no, sit down, be quiet.
Oh, exactly. But
which I understand.
There I saw other kids as well.
Yeah, sure.
Run around and misbehave and disrupt people, and I get that. But the next thing I saw this mother do felt kind of sad, because the mother did enjoy playing with her kid. That was definitely apparent, and I don't think we talk about that enough. That it's really great.
Enjoying the kid.
Enjoying playing with the kid. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Making the kid laugh. It seems to me like that's the best thing you could ever do.
It's fun.
But almost immediately after that, the mother almost forced her kid to take the phone and go sit somewhere else and be quiet.
Yeah.
And you could almost tell that there was disappointment on this. I think you could tell that there was disappointment on this kid's face. That I don't think kids want to be on devices. I think that's like my hot take. I don't know. That's a hard case to make, because they are addicting in all of those things, especially for kids and malleable minds and whatnot. But I do think kids pay attention to when their parents are paying attention to them.
Absolutely.
And it really says something about the parent-child relationship if a parent is giving a kid their device so that they can go sit somewhere else and be quiet and not be a disturbance to them.
Yeah. I think there's a time and place for that.
Time and place for devices?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, well, it doesn't have to be a device, but there is a time, like, we do like TV on Saturdays kind of thing, or if we're like really desperate, but we try to like keep it just to Saturdays for our kids, and that's like a special thing for them. It's a great memory. But the rest of the week we try really, really hard not to do screens. And for them, I mean, I have my phone, of course, but like, and we'll like look at Google Photos together. Those are things, but there's so much here. It's, again, these issues are so complex. Sure. What I'm trying to say, though, hone on what you said, is I think there is a time and place for quiet alone time, because and here's another thing, like, you will burn, as a mother, you will burn yourself out if you're trying to meet every need of your child. Sure. And so, like, yes, is the child going to be disappointed sometimes when you can't play with them? Yes, all the time for me. But I'm also making them dinner or attending to another child who needs me. And so there is that sense of, like, they need your attention. They also need to know they're not the center of the world, and that they can be okay on their own. Sure. And so I think that quiet time, like we do in the little years for my son, we would have every afternoon, even after he was done taking naps, like, oh, it's quiet book time now. You go to your room, give him a stack of books, picture books, set him on his bed, and I had sometimes an hour and a half. Sometimes he would fall asleep, but sometimes he would look, and sometimes I would set his timer. So he was like, you can have, 30 minutes of book time, and then play in your room quietly. And that actually gave him the space to be alone, find things to do on his own, and also gave him the space. His room is safe for him as a little toddler. So much of the day, especially at that age, is me just being like, no, don't do that. Oh no, that's not how we do this. Oh, do it this way. And it's like, oh, it's such a relief for, think about that for a little child. Oh, it's such a relief where I can just do what I want and not get in trouble and not have someone be like, no, or yep, but do it this way, or it's just, and it's gave me relief to oh right, I don't have to control or manage or whatever. It's just that that I think that's really important, especially if you're an introvert. but truly, and so while I do hear what you're saying, I also want to push back a little bit, and I think that's a balance that every mom and family's gonna have to figure out on your own. And I know that in cultural, we probably tend towards over using the screens just because that's the air we breathe,
Sure.
So you have a point, but I'm also pushing back.
No, I can definitely see why you would want to push back, but
yeah,
I mean maybe this is just a male female thing,
mm-hmm.
but when you say it's good for the kid to go be alone and
mm-hmm.
have that free time to explore whatever interests him, etc., and learn to read on his own and all things like that. I mean, I see time like that, and this is probably not a good thing, but I see the time like that as wasted opportunity to teach that kid to read, or teach him to read the right things as opposed to the wrong things, and direct
no. But see, if you give him the right kind of books, so I'm pretty careful about. Well, not just pretty careful. We get a lot of books, and again, this is totally I'm not trying to say this is a moral thing. This is just our personal family preference. When we get books that are made from a Disney knockoff, it's the Disney version of the movie. I will let my kids look at them for a while, and then I will surreptitiously remove them from the bookshelves because they keep going back to those ones. And I'm we have books with real pictures that people have painted or drawn, good illustrations. I love those. So I'm trying to curate my little library for the kids to have these beautiful things that are beautiful and good for them to look at, and things that are going to inspire them as well. And so I think you don't have to worry about what you're saying is valid. Yes, we want to help them read, pick what's good and what's not, but you do that by kind of removing what's not. It's like sweets in the house. Do we have dessert sometimes? Yeah, but do we have it all the time? Is that what we only eat? No, absolutely not. And so I think it's impossible and probably even bad to remove all of the less than quality, high quality literature or art or whatever. And the reason I'm saying this is because you have to also, or one of the things that the children need to learn is discernment. Why do I like this book better? Oh, why am I drawn to this book? What is it and there's nothing wrong with Disney. It's well, that's another story, but there's nothing wrong with these Disney books. They're they're doing, but why are the kids drawn to them? Well, that's something that I need to think about as as a parent, sure. And maybe sometimes they'll think about it. It's oh, well, what do I like about this? And usually the writing's not super great because it's just 3 lines from 10 scenes, summarizing 10 scenes in a movie, and it's not really that. It's not really that great, but they're remembering. Maybe it's a movie they've seen. They're remembering something and reliving the adventure. If it's a movie that they've seen. And so I think that anyway, you have to teach discernment, teach appetite, help form appetites by removing the things that are, not good. But I think too, once you give kids real food, they're gonna know, oh, this cupcake that's completely made of sugar and nothing, chemicals and process. Yeah, it actually doesn't make me feel good, and it looks nice, but that is an incredible skill for a kid to learn, because then they're oh, I actually don't want that. Yeah. And I think that's what you're trying to say too is screens. You were saying oh, they want that personal attention. I think that's true. But if they're not, but if this is why I think we have so many problems later on with teens. If they're not getting attention from the parent and they're getting it from the screen, where do we go? Where do many people go to get attention? It's it's on the internet. It's this false whatever. It's
false in one sense, but it's also real in that it's giving them attention.
It is, but it's usually it's not. It's almost less human attention because
of course it's less human.
Anyway, I feel again we're getting adrift. I'm not sure how far you want to go down that rabbit hole.
If you want to keep going down that rabbit hole, we can. But to piggyback off of what you were saying earlier, because you kind of threw threw something back at me that I think I was about to disagree with. So I think
okay.
I'm writing myself into a trap a little bit. But I've been trying to learn more about schooling and parenting and things along those lines. It's been an interest as of late, and the more I look at it, the more opportunities I kind of see. Especially, I'm more engineering minded and scientifically minded, so I kind of see, okay, if I could teach this and this by the age of 6, and maybe if I preemptively start teaching them to run or exercise or what have you, then maybe I can push them in this direction. Just trying to break it down to do it as efficiently as possible. But I've also kind of hit a stump where I'm thinking there's a lot going on in nature that has been honed and prepared over the course of millennia to produce the optimal developmental strategy for kids as they grow up. And me thinking that I know better than Mother Nature is almost pretty arrogant to do. So to let them make those decisions on their own, say to have them develop discernment of here are the good books, here are the bad books, here are the good cupcakes versus the bad cupcakes versus the good apples.
Yeah.
That's
or even good cupcakes. Like if you make homemade cupcakes, like you can generally make them taste really good, but also be less processed and less chemically and whatever else. But anyway, go ahead. Good versus bad. You're like, how do we discern? Yes.
And there's an element of trust in that too, that you're extending to the kid whenever you say, go figure it out on your own. I've given you the tools to make the right decision, and that's definitely a good setup for later in life, because it.
I think it's necessary. I think that's so much of what being a mom is just I'm setting you up to be able to do this on your own when I'm not around.
Sure. Well, that's the opposite would be the Oedipal mother trap, and where you always depend on me, you always love me, and always come back to me. That going back to what I saw in there, I was paying attention to a bunch of different families trying to, because this type of stuff has been on my mind.
Yeah.
And I saw one kid who was probably 2 or 3 years old, something like that, and he was still in a diaper, and I looked at his mouth, and his mouth was, all of his teeth were yellow and blue from overabundance of candy.
Oh, no.
And anytime he left his mother's breast, the worst crying I've ever heard in my entire life. And you can tell that there's, and I've seen this with a handful of other Oedipal mothers as well, is that there's this sense of never leave me, always love me. I can't trust you.
And
it's not even that I can't trust you to be on your own. It's that I don't want you to trust yourself to be on your own. I'd rather you always come with me.
I think that is so tragic, and also one of my biggest fears in terms of like that would be like, to me that's like the antithesis of everything I'm trying to do as a mom, but it's also understandable, and I think that responding in compassion is helpful in this kind of context, because
why do you say compassion? Because it seems like
because they're human. That's coming out of a deep insecurity in the mother. That's coming out of a deep insecurity. It's like, I need my child. And I think that's why this culture that we live in is so impossible sometimes to be a mom, because it's saying like, oh, don't be a mom, don't be a mom. Oh, now you're a mom. That's the only thing you're doing. And it's like, if that's the only thing I'm doing, then like, I better like keep this thing that makes me a mom, and like, so I can be a mom forever, because now that's me. And I was like, well, no, like that's why we need that tension of like, I am giving my entire life to this thing, or this part of my life is all encompassing in this like very intense 2 or 3 years, whatever. And then, but it can't, I guess what I mean is like, if you're not confident enough on your own to be like, this is who I am without my children, like quiet time for me was important because it reminded me that I was not a mom all the time. It gave me the chance, whether I needed to nap, whether it was like, oh, I need to take care of chores that I couldn't do before, or whether it was like, oh, I get some creative time, I can like go make something, or like, I don't know, obviously you can't go on a walk unless you have a baby, someone home, but like do something that's for me. And I think that is so important. And I don't, like, we get, again, that's another one of those cultural conversations that's like, oh, well, you got to do like self-care. But I don't think we actually really know how, we talk about it a lot, we don't really know how to do it. Sure. And I think it's also in the context of like, when you're actually like laying down your life for another person, this little human, you actually like, you really do need those times where it's like, okay, now I'm like set a safe environment for them so that I can go be myself. And so I think that the idea of the devouring mother, or like the mother that's so needy to have, like needs to have her children all the time and or have them call, I think is coming out of this, something's not right inside of her soul, or like her being, that it like needs this other little human to define her and fill her. And I think that's tragic. And like,
so you pointed out a couple different things that point to just how complicated it is to be a mother, because you're simultaneously, once you become a mother, once you find out you're pregnant, this becomes your almost full identity, especially when the baby is very, very young.
Yeah.
Because it is a full-time job and then some.
Yeah.
So it is important to take up that role, but then you also are trying to maintain this level of individuality, and you do need your self-care time. So it even within the culture, it still seems, like modern society culture, it seems to be this contradiction where we talk about self-care a lot, but then we're also developing Oedipal mothers all the time. And to the point about something lost within the mother, that she creates this Oedipal situation, my suspicion with the mother who had this kid, she was absolutely devouring this kid. She didn't have a husband around, and I'm curious if it's the fatherlessness that's going around. My working hypothesis is something like, once you have a kid and you don't have a husband around, then maybe you're starting. Here's a way to think about it. Your kid is not sick but wants to stay home from school, so he claims to be sick. So he goes up to his mother and asks, I'm not feeling well, can I stay home? And rather than looking at the kid and saying, I can tell that you're playing a game and testing me, go to school anyways, she'll say, I'm kind of getting lonely when he's at school because I don't have anyone around. Maybe I'll give in this once and have some alone time with my kid, and maybe we'll go out for ice cream, and you can justify it to yourselves and have a good day. But you can see how that can spiral into lies and deceit to each other and within themselves, to become a situation where I'm creating this thing to always depend on me, so I don't always have to be alone. Because
I think we see that. Oh, go ahead.
Because if you can't, and maybe this isn't always the case, but you can absolutely psychologize yourself into saying, if I can't keep a man around, maybe I can at least keep this kid around.
Yeah, and maybe that is more common. I don't know. Maybe that is more common than. I think we make a lot of excuses for ourselves. I personally can't speak to that because I have an incredibly loving, committed partner. But I also know that to do this on my own without that would be, I don't know what type of person I'd be.
Sure.
And there's other factors. Like my partner's not my husband's not the defining factor in that, but he's a huge part of it. And to try to do this on your own is just a incredibly difficult thing. Like, being a mom is so isolating a lot of times. And
why do you say that?
Because generally you're the only one there with your kids. Like, we don't live in communes usually. Right. Like, you're the only other adult with this kid all day long. If you're home, if you don't work, maybe you go and have play dates. Maybe that's a thing. And then you get to maybe hang out with some moms. But like, I've been really fortunate with having mom friends that are not judgmental and mean, but like, there's whole like sitcoms about this, like the mom judgment, and they're all like pretending to be nice, but really they're just like judging each other. And because there's so much insecure, even being a mom, like I get so insecure of being in being a mom, like, am I doing enough? And then of course that like creates all these tensions, and like when someone says something, you're like, oh, like, do they think I'm doing enough? And like, does it matter? Not really. But do I feel it? Well, sometimes. Like, and for other people, like, yeah, that like they feel that way much more than I do. And I think, I don't know, there's just so much. I think what we're circling around here is there has to be some sort of like internal stability and formation that's actually helpful, not just for being a mom, but being a dad, being a child. Like, what is that? Like, it's almost like this your soul has to be filled, if we can use that language, some other way than this like relational need. It seems like that's what we're kind of
when you say relational need, you mean relational parent-child need within the family, etc.?
Anything. Like, you were talking about, like, oh, well, I need this man and he's not here, so maybe I can keep this child. Like, there's all this, like, well, where does that need come from? Okay. There's all these, like, needs, like, or even, like...
fulfilling the need that your soul requires, and some of that's going to come through your family, but some of it can come elsewhere. Like, there's something within you that requires that.
There is relational needs, yeah, but I think also, like, if you're always looking for people to fulfill, there has to be some sort of, like, stability on your own, aside from these relations, aside from my relationship to my child. I am myself regardless. Like, yes, I am a mother, but that's part of who I am, not the whole thing. And like, there has to be some sort of stability internally, to help and like encourage these appropriate and stable, so if you use like psychological language, secure attachments, like, that has to come from being like a stable person, I think, is what it seems like. That's what we're circling around here in this conversation.
I think I get what you're getting at.
Yeah.
That you're trying to, that you have this need, and you're, if you don't have the man around, say, and you're trying to fill it up with the kid, then. Or
it could be anything else. It could be like your own parent, whatever, like from your childhood trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a man-woman relationship or partner.
But it comes to something like, you hear something akin to this a lot, where people say you have to be secure within yourself first before you can be in a relationship, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know that they're ever fully secure.
Right. I don't like that idea, which is why it seems.
Oh, why not? Because you feel like you'll never get to be totally secure. Right. Yeah.
And at what point do you?
Yeah.
What's the criteria by which you measure?
Yeah, right.
Your security.
Such a scientist. What's the criteria?
Right. Well, at what point do I
where I am on the graph?
Secure enough to where I can go into the relationship and have the kids and etc.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem.
We overcomplicate it when we try to put it on that level, I think. Yeah.
But it also seems to me that a lot of your security as a person comes from, if you're a guy, maybe it goes with your job, and maybe you could say with a girl too, but as being a parent and through your relationships, I think that's a lot of how your psychological stability.
Yeah, I can speak to that, actually. And I'm glad you brought this up, because I did want to tell this story, because I think there's a lot of fear around childbirth and pregnancy. Everybody's story is so unique. And I feel like there is kind of this like mom war kind of going on of like, well, I had to put up with this and I had to put up with this. And some of those things are real. Like, it is not fun. But I've had like super easy pregnancies, but there's still things that were not fun. And I don't really want to talk about the things that are not fun, but like, it's hard. Like, there's really hard things with being pregnant, and like, we can't minimize that, but it's also not the whole story. Like, it's not always like that. And so I just want to put that out there. If there's anyone afraid of being pregnant, like, it's actually a really beautiful thing. Again, if you submit to the process, it's a good thing. Is it difficult? Yes. Did I want it to be over, especially by like, the last month and a half? You're like, yes. I cried every day for the last 2 weeks, I think, with almost every child. I'm like, can I just be done, please? But I think with that, this is what I want to talk about. Actually delivering a child is one of the most empowering experiences, probably the most empowering experience I've ever had. Okay. And I think, like, growing up, I was very shy, very insecure, and I had a very, like, a pretty tight community, both with my family and, like, the church or the school that I went to was very, like, a tight-knit community, so I don't think I felt that insecurity as much. But if I ever had any new situations, new friends, like, I was so insecure. And that went on through high school, even into college a little bit. I felt like so much like a late bloomer. Just so many insecurities that I struggled so hard to put aside so that I could, like, be friends with people. Or talk to guys or whatever. Like, I could talk to guys if I played sports with them. It's like, oh, now we can be friends because I just played a sport with you and I can actually talk to you. And it didn't mean that I didn't want, like, I of course had crushes on them, but like, the crush was like the thing that made the distance, and then like getting to play a sport was like, oh, now we can talk. Yeah. And so anyway, all that to say, like, I'm very insecure, very, very shy. And then when I got married, that helped. Because again, my husband was like really affirming and loving and kind. Verbally affirming, and then but still, you still have those like insecurities. And then but when I delivered a child, all of a sudden there was this switch of none of that matters anymore. Like, I just brought a human into the world, and whether or not you agree with like getting painkillers or not, like that is totally up to every woman. You do what you got to do. For me, I knew that I was more afraid of the painkillers than I was of the pain. Really? Yeah, and I think that's because my mom actually gave me some literature, which was really helpful. And it was along the lines of, like, your body's made to do this. Like, think about all the women that have delivered children throughout history that never had the painkillers and the...
Every single one of your ancestors, for example.
Yes. And are, like... I think that's, like, the fear of the pain is actually worse than the pain. And actually, it does something to... The fear actually does something to your body where it makes the pain worse. Right. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, okay, well... The main thing is then not to be afraid. And so was that hard? Yeah, and they have all these like breathing techniques, whatever. I didn't really do too much of them. One of the things that I read, which I thought was really, really cool, was to go over with your partner, or whoever's your support person in the delivery room, and have them tell a story to you. Like, you tell them a story of a time in your life when you felt this, like, absolute victory. When you're just like, you are on the top of your game. You're like, I can do this, like, whatever. And you prep your partner, your support person, whether it's, your partner or your mom or your doula or whoever, and you say, hey, this is the story I want you to tell me when I'm, like, fading out, when I don't want to do this anymore, when I'm just, like, giving up. Tell me this story. And so for me, this is actually really sweet. I'm glad I get to share this story. I don't know. For me, I ran track in high school, and so my senior year especially, it's my last year, excited to run. I ran the 1600, and I'm getting ready. Like, I loved this. By this time, I've done it, for the last 4 years, and I often won. It was big fish, small school. Wouldn't have, even now, at the times that I had, were like, they're all right. But that's how it goes. But at the time, I was winning medals, and that was cool. Yeah. So I'm getting my senior year, and my dad decided to come to this track meet. He's like, oh, I've never been to your track meet. Like, I'm going to come to this. And he was very busy. He was an educator. And so he came to this last track meet, and it was fun to hear this story because he's standing next to my coach later. Or I heard the story later. He's standing next to my coach. And, part of my strategy is, like, you pick a pace, you can keep it regardless. Don't get too far behind, but don't, like, kill yourself trying to race these young people who are going to burn out on the second lap. Just, like, pick the pace that is yours and stick to it, and then increase and then increase and increase. So, like, this is happening. There's people in front of me. My dad's like, oh no, is she gonna make it? He's like talking to my coach, like, what's gonna happen? And, like, I'm just like running, I've got this. And my coach is like, she's got this. And then, like, it goes on. And at the end, like, I sprint down I overtake the last person on the last curve and, like, sprint to the end and have this great finish. And it, it feels good because I love running, and I love that feeling of, the feeling that if you haven't had it, you just need to go run for a long time, which I'm sure you can relate to.
I disagree with that
entirely. Oh, really? Yeah. We can talk about running later sometime. Yes, but anyway, so that to me was a really empowering thing, and it was cool that my dad was there, and that, like, he's like, wow, like, she did it, and my coach was proud of me. It was just like, this was like my top of the world moment. Sure. And so that was the story. I was like, hey, Nate, can you tell me this when I'm, like, giving up or feeling tired? And so he did, and that was sweet. It was like, it was special. I was like, you can do this. Like, I've seen you be a victor before. Like, of course he wasn't part of my life at that time, but and I think that experience, but then, like, having the child, like, it got rid of so many insecurities. It just, like, I don't really care anymore what you think about me, because, like, I have a human to take care of, and that's just so much more important than these other thoughts. I'm sure that's not everyone's story, but for me, like, giving birth was actually empowering. And I think that's really sad because culturally we're like, oh, giving birth will make you insignificant, it'll take you out of the sphere, like, the sphere of influence, it'll, like, like, everyone, you're not special if you give birth. Like, no, it's like, that actually gives you power. Like, giving birth is so incredible, and guess what, men can't do it. And it's beautiful, honestly. Like, women who give birth, and again, I think that's part of, like, why, again, painkillers are fine if that's what you need, like, do it, but I think there is something really special to not have them, because it is like, oh, I've been through this and come out, like, victorious, if you want to use that word, or, like, sure, with this child in tow, and here they are, behold this beautiful thing, anyway, I think that's
no, that's really spectacular to say, because it seems to me, as far as I can tell, that just giving the anecdotal reports that I've heard from all the young women that I know, mm-hmm, they're all somewhere between scared and terrified of giving birth. Yes. So it's good to hear someone. I want to, like, say that over and over. It is such an empowering experience, and I got so mad when people in my life would talk, men especially, these old men in my life. Oh, it was so frustrating. They would talk about how much their wives screamed during labor. Really? And I'm like, I'm about to give birth. Like, how dare you have this conversation in front of me? I was so angry. I didn't yell at them, but, like, that to me is just so sickening. It's like, you're just, like, laughing at this? That is not okay. Oh, they were laughing at it.
I mean, they're like telling these anecdotes of, like, oh, my wife was, like, swearing at me and screaming and, like, squeezing my hand and being like, this is your fault. And, like, yeah, it's funny, haha, this is your fault. But, like, to a woman, like, it hits differently when you're pregnant, about to have a child. Like, that to me is like, no, like, have some awareness, gentlemen. Like,
Why do you think they were telling that story? I mean, was it
I
just
think they thought it was funny.
They just thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't like trying to hurt me. It was, it was just.
Well, I mean,
it was just ignorance. Honestly, it was just whatever. Putting the social moment of like, let's have a good time over at the expense of like my personal emotional comfort.
Sure.
If you want to break it down that way.
Sure.
But yeah, I think there is a culture that says, and I'm sorry for interrupting you earlier. I think there is the cultural moment is very fear based around that, and that's so sad. It's like, no, this is actually empowering and beautiful, and you're made to do, like, the woman's body is made to do this. Like, it's meant, this is supposed to happen. Like, this is how it's designed, right. How it's designed, how it's formed. Like, this is supposed to happen. Like,
so you're leaning more
submit to the process.
Submit to the yeah, there has to be this humbling aspect to it, and there is the important notion that every single one of your female ancestors has gone through this. So they probably got something right, given that you're here after all this time.
Yeah.
It seems though, like I can't just figure out exactly why though we're pushing away from it, and we're fearing, we're putting fear in all of our young girls. Like why do we continue to discourage all of this when it seems like it might be like you're saying it's so empowering, right? Why aren't there other mothers out there saying that at the same time? I mean,
there probably are some, but
there's probably some truth to the fact that it's scary and everything and painful and all of that.
And painful, yeah.
Yeah, but
Scar Wars kind of.
Sure.
I had this many hours of labor. I had this many.
Well,
yeah.
And that goes to what you were saying earlier about there's this like latent competition among mothers to make sure that they're parenting correctly and judging one another. And my mom has said the same thing about the network that we were growing up in as well. I don't know what to make of any of that. It seems like everything is just disrespecting mothers, disrespecting the process, and disrespecting everything that you do when you rear a child.
Yeah. Well, I can say, and I don't know if this has to do with like a certain level of education in a country or not. Like, I don't know, or if it's just like an American problem. I haven't traveled extensively, but I do know that when I went to Greece, so it was like, I don't know, year and a half, 2022, sometime, and I was pregnant with my third child, and I was with my husband, and we're in Greece. We're doing a master's program actually, and we were learning Greek. And I'd love to talk about that because I think there's another part of this fear part that I think is actually coming from the Bible, and I think it's a misinterpretation of the Bible. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
So the story I want to say is when I was in Greece, I felt like a queen. People treated me like, oh, you're pregnant? What can I get you? Can I give you a ride in my car? Like, what? Yeah, they're just like, oh, just like taking care of me, like honoring me. People, even our... And
you didn't find that in America?
Oh, no. And I even I got into this master's program, and I didn't really know a whole lot about... the college that I was signing up for. It was kind of like a very last minute. I didn't know what their take on on having children would be, and I know that like women in higher education, mothers in higher education is kind of not a thing, because having kids is so intense, and also being in higher education is, and so. I did not tell anyone that I was pregnant until I was accepted because I was like, I don't want them to hold that against. I don't want to give them any grounds for not letting me in.
Sure.
And afterwards, I told them, and I think I got a few eyebrow raises, but everyone was very supportive and just like, okay, like, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. And I was so grateful because that is something, my husband and I had talked about. This is our third child. And we're like, okay, we've been through this. We know how to share the partnership, share the load. What is it actually like having a newborn? Can we sit in classes with a newborn? Well, yeah, actually. Can we sit in the classes with a toddler? No. They're not mobile for the first 6 months, so that was the amount of time we needed in the last half. But anyway, all that to say, being in Greece, people treated us, they respected Nate as a dad, too. They're like, wow, you're doing the real thing.
Really?
Like, yeah. And they treated me so respectfully, and it was such a beautiful experience. And that's been our experience with the interactions with the college as well. But that's not the normal American culture of like, oh, you're doing an amazing thing.
Okay, so if that's true, if that's the case, if that's true, what do you think we're lacking then in America? Like given that you experienced that in Greece, how do you think things would change with young women and how they approach motherhood?
I think we're narcissistic.
If we moved our culture towards where modern Greece stands.
I don't know enough about modern Greek culture, honestly, and I don't know, but I do know that
specifically with
in America, I feel like we have this like self-fulfillment is the highest good, and that's just such a lie. And but that's been going on for years, and I think what we're reaping the ideological not benefits, but fruit of that, consequences of that. But I think it has to do with this idea of like, oh, if I'm not self-fulfilled, then like when that's the highest good, like the whole thing falls apart. And it's I think we need to tell a different story, that like fulfilling yourself or like making yourself be comfortable, or like, I mean, even the fact that we have instant like grocery deliveries, or like anything you want can arrive at your porch with a click of a button. Like, I'm not saying that that's bad, but it does shape us. And I think it shapes us in a way that is maybe not, it makes us soft and flabby and like,
so it's symptomatic.
It's about like self-gratification, and that's really like that is the antithesis of being a mom. Like, it's not it's not gratifying. It is this like, I don't like this term because I think it can be used badly, but it is self-sacrificial. And
so it seems to me that our modern culture is pushing towards a notion of who cares what other people think, that we do what we like, as opposed to doing the duty, as opposed to doing what we ought to do. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about traveling and why it's a good thing, why it's a bad thing, etc. And contrasting that with having kids and starting a family, especially doing it young. And I kind of found that we were arguing from different premises as to what we should be aiming at. What's the good that we're aiming at? Is the good that we're aiming at within the context of traveling? Would it be seeing as much as you can and learning about different cultures, learning about different ideas and architecture and art, and seeing the world? If that is the good that we want to aim at, then yeah, I can see why it's good to go travel and all of that. But if that's the wrong premise that you should start from, then what is the premise that we should be setting? What's the good that we're aiming at here?
I'm so glad you brought this. I know I read this in a book. I don't remember which one, but it's so spot on. Ideally, as a culture, the idealized, like, what's the highest like figure in the culture is like a 28-year-old male who can go wherever he wants, and he has money, he can go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants. Right. That's like our highest. Well, like, wow, no offense to you, what a terrible thing to aim for. Right. Whereas like in another culture, like say like in ancient Hebrew culture, what's the highest good? It's that old person who is at that, their height of their wisdom, and they have generations following them that are honoring them and revering them, and that's like the highest good. That's what they're looking for, is like, oh, that's what I want to become. And I think we need to somehow change the narrative of our culture, like even if we just start with ourselves. What is the cultural narrative for me, or what is the narrative, what am I aiming for? And if it's going to be this upwardly mobile, unattached, rich person, like that ship sailed a long time for me, like a long time ago, and like on accident on some level. Like, I didn't want to have kids right away, and that's just how that's how it happened. And
if you remember from Dr. Nicole Blackwood's class, she pointed out that if you look at portraits of Alexander the Great, they're all youthful and embracing that youth and vigor that he had. But if you look at portraits of Caesar, then he's old and he's aged, and some of the portrait artists and sculptors would add wrinkles to his face. And you look at the coins of Caesar, he's like a skeleton.
Interesting.
He's revered for his wisdom and his age, as opposed to Alexander, who's revered for his youth
and beauty.
So you're right that we do seem to honor youth and unattachment and hedonistic impulses, but that's not necessarily what we should be aiming at. Maybe you can make an argument that we could be aiming at it, but that's not necessarily a given. And so what's the argument against it? What should we be revering then? I mean, I guess like a Christian ideal would be the crucifix and Mother Mary holding your child. But I mean, maybe can you argue that that's troglodytic and old and whatnot, or
I'm not sure. I think that there are elements of, well, I mean, Jesus didn't live to be very old, so
okay. That's fair.
That's one thing. But also, I think
I could push back against that and say that God the Father, when he's depicted, is generally old. And,
yeah. That's really interesting. I'm not sure if I've thought about that enough. I don't know. I think it has to do with changing our appetites. Like, there are so many pieces of art, so many pieces of literature that are just like, this is all fleeting, like the fleeting pleasures of youth. Like, how often do you read about that if you're reading it, like, and do you want to spend the next 60 or 70 years of your life looking back at the glory days, or do you want to like move into your glory days? I mean, just like for you personally, like,
oh sure, that's a fair point. I mean,
like, just like think about it, and like anyone in their right mind is like, do I want to have all the things right now for the next like 3 years, 4 years maybe, and then it's gonna like the slow decline into like, oh, now I'm just looking back to the glory days? Or do you just want to keep getting better and better and better? And I know that sounds unrealistic, but that's how I'm living. Like I'm expecting to like get better and better and better, and to like to be more fully human and more fully alive. Like the older I get, like I've got plans, sure. Things to do and people to love. And I think if we're living that way, like that's just so much richer and fuller than the first scenario. And I think given those two options, if people are actually like had someone hold out to them like, oh, do you want this one or this one, I'm pretty sure most people would choose, no, I want to keep getting better and better and like enjoy things and like the rich fullness. Like most people want that. There may be some people that are like, I don't believe in that, so I'm gonna like go for this other thing. But like, sure. So, I don't know, maybe we need more examples like showing that this is possible. This because I think there's cultural cynicism that's like, that's not a real thing. Like, this is all I get, and then we're done. This is all I get.
This is all you get up until like 28 or whatever. Then you're basically a dead person for the rest of your life, something like that.
I don't know, dead. I mean, it's just like the slow decline, which is also one of those things we fear, and
Sure.
But
okay, so there's a couple things there. I wonder exactly why we would honor the youth, say, and maybe it's something to do with like a media culture where good-looking young people tend to be the actors that you hire. And maybe there's something with football stars and baseball stars and whatnot as well. You have your prime whenever you're younger, so just implicit within a TV culture, it's kind of a given that you have to have young actors. So maybe that's some sort of influence there.
Maybe,
but it does come a lot to what you aim at. Because maybe I could argue against that and say something like, if you're telling stories that value youth as part of the characters in the story, then those are going to be the ones, and you're going to find the actors that fit that bill. As opposed to if you're telling stories that honor any sort of status that doesn't involve 28-year-olds, say, or younger, then that opens up the actors to larger roles older roles down the road. I think it has something to do with the stories that we tell. I mean,
absolutely.
Here's something that blows my mind when I realize this, is that when you look at Disney shows, for example, on Disney Channel and whatnot, all those kids are absolute geniuses, and all the parents are buffoons. And all you see whenever you're looking on television, that's laced through everything, and that.
Yeah, I see that in certain children's books too, and like the parents are like, yes, I won't name it, but there's a certain children's book that I'm like, I don't want that in my house because the dad is always a jerk, or not a jerk, but like just stupid. Like, I don't want that.
Well, Nate's not fathers in particular.
Yeah, fathers in particular. Yeah.
Bad raps, but I think it's just to keep it on the age thing. It does seem to be youth is almost genius levels, and then you become a buffoon, and no one takes you seriously, and everyone kind of talks down to you like a child. Like you notice that all the time with older people.
I think there's a certain element of rising above, like growing up as like, it just doesn't really matter what people are gonna say about you. Like, it really just doesn't matter. And I think like that has been a very staying factor for me in the cancel culture that we live in. Of just like, I'm going to be a person of virtue, if I can use that phrase, a person of faith. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be this thing, this person, regardless of what people are saying about me. Do I want to do it in good company with other good people and like-minded and like-hearted individuals? Absolutely. If they go away, like, am I still going to keep doing this? Like, yes, I am. And I think that's been like very important for me in this last year, because having done the master's program, I did feel very celebrated as a mom. I was doing this incredible thing, like, oh, it's a really intense, rigorous academic program, and I'm pregnant, and I'm a mom, or then I gave birth, and like, oh, I have a newborn, and I'm doing it. And it's like, now I'm just a normal mom. Like, I don't have another job. Like, I'm homeschooling my kids. Like, it's not glamorous. It's a lot of like cooking and cleaning and taking care of kids and listening to them when I'd rather be reading something else, you know? And like, but do I give up just because I'm not in the spotlight anymore? Like, no. And I think like you have to have that staying power of, it doesn't, like, I am more than what people say about me. And I think that that's kind of this aspect of like this online presence is just, it just doesn't matter. But like people just take it so seriously, and it's like, well, no, like be the person that you're supposed to be. Go do that and be you, and it doesn't matter what people say, because now we have technology that can make me say, you could AI dub this and make me say, move my mouth with it, you know, to say whatever you wanted to, and that's too bad. Like, so, but is it going to make me be a different person? I hope not.
So just to throw an idea in there in that last bit that you said, maybe this is just an idea I just came up with. Maybe that lends itself towards the sophists in ancient Greece, where now you can have anyone justify anything to you if you just type something into some sort of AI chatbot, and they can make the argument for you. That's another topic. That's a cool idea. But I think it comes to what exactly are we aiming at as a society? What do we honor as? It doesn't necessarily have to be sacred, but what is it exactly that we're aiming at? And if we're
I don't know. I think I said before. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Just the life that you kind of painted out of your day-to-day life. You know, that's not exactly. You said it. You said it wasn't glamorous. You know, it's like if we. Then what is glamorous? Is glamour what we aim at? What do we aim at?
Well, I mean, I think
is that not a life and story that we should be telling and aiming at? And if not, fair enough. But
I think honestly, I'm not sure that we're intentional enough to be aiming at anything, and that's part of the problem. We want the instant gratification. And we're not paying attention to how it's shaping us. And like that's a real. I have this thing about convenience, which I think is a very big deal. We do think, and again, there's nothing wrong with paper plates necessarily, but I don't like to use disposable, or I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm not going to say it that strongly. I get frustrated at holidays when all we do is eat off paper plates and then throw it away.
Sure. I'm
like, why? Why are we doing this? This seems like a waste. Like, actually, let's wash the dishes together, or whatever. Do the extra work to load the dishwasher and, you know, be like, can we do this, please? Like, this is is it inconvenient? Yes. Is it worth it? Yeah, I think so. And there's actually maybe good things that you find along the way in those moments that you wouldn't, because you're, like, I think we put so much emphasis on convenience and so much, like, oh, and then it's not even an intentional emphasis. It's like oh, well, I don't feel like it, so I'm just doing what's convenient. And the counterpoint, because I know this is also true, for my family Thanksgiving, we've switched to using, there's a big family, we had like 40 people there this time, we've switched to using paper plates because we have one day together where all my cousins, all my siblings, my mom and dad, the aunts and uncles, we all get together, and it's like we don't actually want to spend the time cleaning up. We want to spend the time with each other because it's so rare and it's so precious. And so like to that, I'm like, okay, makes sense. Let's use those. And actually the women my age in the family decided that because my mother and her generation would probably still be using the nice cutlery and whatever else, and my siblings and sisters and cousins were like, actually, we want to give our moms a break. We want them to sit down and enjoy and not feel like they have to be cleaning up. And so I think that was a choice made out of love. And I'm happy to make choices. I'm happy to use paper plates if the decision is made out of love. But if it's just made out of convenience, let's not. Let's do something else. Like, we can do better.
Okay.
And I think that's a really big deal. I honestly think, like, so much about recycling. Like, and I have this theory about friendship as well, which I can get into, but like recycling is inconvenient in America. It's just inconvenient. It's so frustrating to me. It's like, this should be a no-brainer. Why are we not doing this? Why is it so difficult? Because it's inconvenient. Because there's not, like, money backing. Like, hey, maybe money is not the most important thing here. Let's pay attention. Anyway, that's one thing. That just seems, anyway, there's so many things that we're like, we choose the convenient rather than the intentional, inconvenient love. And my theory about friendship is, the degree to friendship you have for a person is the degree to you're willing to be inconvenienced for them. So it's like... Boy.
Okay, so that's like an inversion. So the way I always frame it isn't a matter of convenience. I always frame it as efficiency. Maybe that's like a more positive outlook on it, just because I'm more oriented towards being an engineer.
Yeah.
So I see paper plates as a means of oh, we don't have to deal with this, so we can actually do the things that we care about. But you framed it as love, and then you inverted it and said love is something like, within the context of friendship, would be the amount of inconvenience you're willing to undergo.
Yeah.
So
like there are some people in my life that if they said I'm in trouble or oh I need you, I'd drop everything and I'd be there.
Sure.
There's like a few people like that. Then the next level would be like, oh, I do a lot of things for you. Like I'd like move around my day to like make sure that I could, you know, help you out, even if it's inconvenient. Then there's like the people that are like, yeah, I'll like rearrange my schedule to have you over for dinner, or you know, like, and then like down further, and then it's like to the point of like, I think that like that idea of the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
Sure.
It's like, I'm not willing to be inconvenienced for you. Sorry. Sure. And that's like
as opposed to hate, you're willing to go out of your way to be inconvenienced so that you can put someone else down.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which is a different kind of evil, but like, you know, but anyway, convenience, I do think like maybe what we ought to be aiming for is not convenience, it should be love. And that it takes a level of intentionality. There's so much with that. This is like me like spinning off into my own mind here, but I've been reading something recently, and they asked, the guy asked, like, what if Descartes hadn't asked, I think, therefore I am? What if he'd said, actually, I don't know if the guy said this, but I said this. I was like, what if he said, I love, therefore I am? And then, if you take, like seriously, like what? It's like, I know I exist because I love. Whoa, how does that change your philosophy and the approach? I'm just spitballing here. I'm not saying I've adopted this. I wish I had.
Let me see if I can bounce off that real quick.
Yeah, sure. There's one more step to it, but go ahead.
Okay. So it seems to me, with my theory of beauty, it points towards the improbability of its existence.
There's a lot there.
There's a whole lot there. Beauty is defined as the improbability of its existence, and I think I can make a case.
Improbability of its existence. Interesting.
So to frame it within the context of what consciousness is, what it means to be conscious. So Aristotle says something like, the man is the rational animal. I think that's usually what is translated as. The words that he uses, logonehon. So we have the logos. He uses the word logos. And it seems to me that he uses that to distinguish us from the animals. And animals, they don't have free will, right? They're driven by instinct. So human beings have the ability to supersede our instinct. That's not to say that we do it all the time, but we can take whatever our drives tell us to do, whatever the most probable thing that it is we're going to do, and just do something else. Right? That's what it means to have free will, is that we do the thing that whatever is predicted for us to do, we do something else. So if you're saying I love, therefore I am, and love is a matter of inconvenience, and if I can push on inconvenience and tilt it towards improbability, the thing that you're unlikely to do, the thing that's selfless for you to do, then when you say I love, therefore I am, and we're putting love within the context of improbability, then doing the thing that makes you conscious, doing the thing that is improbable, that is love, and that's what makes you real. That's what makes you conscious. Love makes you conscious, something like that.
I like that. I'm not sure. I feel like that's there's a lot more to tease out there.
Sure.
Yeah. So here's the next step, and this like takes it. I don't know. Did you want to say more on that? Because I'm not sure I have anything to respond.
But I'm curious about the next step.
Yeah. So then after saying that, I was like, well, what if it's not like I love, therefore I am? That's very much like on me. What if it's like I have received something, I am loved, therefore I know I exist? And that just like is mind-blowing, because you're like, wait, now like with the whole Descartes thing of like I think, therefore it's very much like I am generating this thing, like here I am. Whereas like that, it's like, oh no, here I am, and I know I am here because I have received something that is not me, that is other.
Sure.
Like I am loved, therefore I am. And I think that's actually closer to probably like cosmic reality than the previous things that we've mentioned, even though they're really fascinating. I'd love to like tease them out a little bit more. I think that one is actually like, oh wow, because it puts humans in, I think, the proper place, which is not the originators. Like we didn't create ourselves. Like we didn't, even if it's like evolution theory of like this, there was no like, that was not us choosing to be chosen or choosing to be selected so that we didn't get, extinguished along the way. Like that's random chance, whatever else. Like that's not a natural selection. That's not like an intentionality on my part. Whereas like the Descartes idea of I think, therefore I am seems to be very much like that intentional, like me, I'm doing it, I'm creating, I'm generating. And like sure, maybe that's where we've arrived, but that's not where we originated in any myth.
True.
Any myth. Is there any myth? I don't know all the myths, so maybe there are, but is there any origin myth that, like...
To push back on that with Descartes, Descartes makes the point that because we have infinity in our heads, because there is something grander than us. And maybe I can't push back using Descartes, but in principle, insofar as something exists beyond us, say, at the very least, to conceptualize it a little straightforwardly, we exist as who we are now, but there's also the potential of who we could be. And whether better or greater, in principle, you have some sort of potential within you to be something else, at the very least something else. But that implies the existence of something greater. So okay, you can continue to extrapolate that of everything that you possibly could be, ultimately up to God, something like that. But insofar as that exists, then there has to be that humbling aspect to your being.
Interesting.
But
okay.
The thing that I think I'm going to get tripped up on is when you say, "I am loved, therefore I am." That feels more. That feels like it's ascribing some sort of personality, some sort of choice to the cosmic force, say, that does the loving. Because if I am loved, therefore I am, I also could be not loved, therefore I am not. So it.
Yeah, that is the logical converse, right?
Right.
Is the right terms?
But that.
But just think about the implications. If you're willing to go with the premise, I am loved, therefore I am.
I am loved would be the premise, therefore.
Yeah.
Right. So
if you're willing to go with that, and the conclusion is, therefore I exist.
Right. And
the other conclusion is like, if I'm not loved, I don't exist. That means like every person is loved.
Sure.
How does that change your entire view of the world?
Sure.
Your entire view of yourself? Like, I don't know.
But
just saying.
But then,
maybe this is what we need for our cultural narrative.
I get.
And you're absolutely right about like assigning personality. I think that's where like my faith comes in. And it's like this idea that I'm toying with is like, oh, that actually lines up with what I believe about God and what, and I think that this is just so rich and so deep, but that's not just like that is. I have encountered that through Christianity, whether that was like the imperfect way that anyone encounters it through their family of origin, church, whatever. There's always going to be mistakes and whatever. There's always stuff to work through, and like I've done a lot of that work as well. And so I guess what I'm trying to steer away from is some sort of like not a fundamentalist understanding of this, but and so I'm trying to avoid the buzzwords that
sure.
that just kind of box what I'm trying to say in a way that I'm not trying to do. So regardless of that, I don't think that I think that there's truth, right? There's absolute truth and reality.
With capital T, truth.
Yes, and I do think that's true. Whether we can know it, like that's the next. Like okay, even in college when I was going through, like I don't know about, like can we actually know? Like I don't doubt the existence of truth, but like can we actually know it? Like is it actually knowable? It's like yeah, I've moved to the point of like yes, it is, and I think that the next or part of this is that the truth is a person, and like I think that also changes reality. Changes the way that we not changes reality. Changes the way that we view reality. We have this idea of like propositional truth. And like facts and things like that. I don't think that's a full enough picture of truth. That's just one part of it.
I mean, you just said that truth is a person, and that.
Think about how that changes things. Like what?
Well,
go ahead.
That makes me think of John when Pilate says, "What is truth?" and Christ doesn't have an answer, but maybe the answer.
Well, he doesn't answer him then, but he says earlier, "I am the way, the truth, and the life."
Right. And that's a within the context of this particular chapter, you can't draw that, but absolutely within John, and it's in the same gospel. So that's not a logical leap.
Yeah, sure.
You could say that. The way it seems to me is that in not answering, he is that answer, like just embodied within.
Behold
Christ,
the man.
Right.
Which is in the same chapter, isn't it? Pilate says, "Behold the man."
Right. I think that is right.
And then he's also like, "What is truth?" And he's answered his own question.
Right.
But tragically in the wrong order.
Sure. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that I think what I'm trying to say here is that I do think that the person of Christ is truth, and I think that has massive implications for everything. But I think also, and this has been the most delightful experience in taking the master's degree that I just did, or reading philosophy, some of it in Greek, discovering these words like logos, which John uses, St. John, but then also, forgive me if I say it wrong, but I remember this time being in a Greek class, and there were the words of, I think it's Aletheia and Doxy.
What are you trying to get
and
at?
One of them is doxy has come to mean glory, right. But one of them is one is truth and one is perception. I think
Aletheia is truth.
Aletheia is truth.
Aletheia.
And then doxy, it has come to mean glory, but it also, before that, it had this sense of like perception of truth, like the perception of reality.
Okay. And that's the translation I've seen is more like opinion. But
opinion. Okay.
It seems like a bad that's probably a bad translation.
Okay, but even so, that kind of gets at the idea.
Right.
And as I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, in my own, how am I fitting this into my own framework of how I believe the world works, and saying like, oh, those two things are met in Christ. Like, he is not just the perception of reality and glory and beauty and whatever. He is that. Because there's lots of things in the world that like appear to be beautiful and are actually bad for you, or like appear to be good and they're actually not good. And then but here it is. It's like the truth and the good and the beautiful are met in this person. And I think like, these Greeks got as close as they could without like they're like the secular prophets. I really see that. Like they're you have the Hebrew prophets that are that's another story. But then there's these secular prophets, and like that to me is just such a bigger, broader picture of of what God is doing. Even if you just suppose with me that there is a God, that like what is he doing? Like, we have this idea of like, and the narrative that gets told through the Hebrew Bible is like how he's chosen, or I should be careful how I say this. I think the interpretation of it is the Jews are the chosen people and nobody else. But if you go back and look at Genesis 3 verse 12, I think there's a verse that says, and through you all nations will be saved. And it's like, even there in this tiny thing, and then it kind of gets forgotten. Sure. And then then it's the Jews, and then like, and then it's like everybody else and the Jews get forgotten and like oppressed, and it's terrible and like bad history. Okay, so but if you go back to that promise that he makes to Abraham, he's saying, through you all nations, like his design from the beginning is all nations. And I think that like, how did that happen? Why did that, like, he's prepping the Greeks already, you know what I mean? Sure. Like he's prepping the Greeks, and then so that at just the right time, when this like when everybody speaks Greek, and then like the ideas of Heraclitus and the logos have like permeated the Roman world, and then he sends the logos at just the right time. Like, it's just beautiful. It just like shows, like, if you're willing to suppose that there is that case, like, oh wow, like that actually wasn't an accident. He's not silent. He's actually been like working this incredible thing into that moment in the person of Christ. Anyway, there's
I could definitely
2 cents.
definitely piggyback off that, but
sure.
We've hit our time. I think we're far over at this point.
Yeah.
We can keep going if you want, but
I think we should probably take a break. But it's been a delightful conversation, and
it has been a delightful.
I know we've strayed far from talking about motherhood, but I think this is the other part of me. I'm not just a mom. This is more real in some ways than, and is the groundwork for being a mom. And this kind of this dialogue is such an honor, so thank you. But also that this kind of faith or whatever perspective gives me the strength to go and do the non-glamorous every day. I can live for you now, child, with a view of something bigger here, and hopefully you can come and enjoy life and enjoy the beauty of the things around. I will say one more thing. I think in all of my studies of philosophy, which granted has not been a lot, I feel like I got a crash course in it and touched on a lot of things, but there's so much more to learn. So I'm not trying to be a professional or a philosopher on any level, but one thing that I felt missing so much during my kind of overview of these different philosophers last year in the master's program was, I kept saying to Nate, I was like, we need a philosophy of delight. We need someone that's like, where is this? We're trying to figure out all these other things. Excuse me, but where's the delight? And even when you get to like Augustine, like he was actually the one that I was like reacting against the most in some ways. Like sure. He's this foundational like Christian author. Like everybody talks about Augustine, and believe me, there's much to be venerated and honored. And I'm not trying to downplay that in any way. Like that's not what I'm saying. However, I think I found it this like aversion or like scared react, not just in him, but even in some of the Stoics or like some of the other people who read this, like the temporal and like earthly world. It's like there's almost this like fear of it, like it's gonna overtake me. It's gonna like. I think I think that's valid, because so often we see that happen, and you know, you get Alcibiades who goes and like is all about fame and honor, and he longs for Socrates, but he can't, like he just doesn't ultimately choose the way of philosophy, or the pursuit of the beautiful, and but he's still drawn to that. And I think, anyway, all that to say, I understand there's valid reasons to be cautious of beauty and the world, but there's also so much delight. And I think if you have like, if you're, I don't know, if the internal things are lined up, then everything else is a joy. Like everything else is a joy. You can delight in all of the things that Augustine warns against, like the things that you're looking at, like the beautiful things at the marketplace that you're looking at, the beautiful music that he was like cautious, like should we even use this in our church services, and like all of those things can actually be a beautiful, like I think that all things that are truly beautiful are pointing back to the ultimate beauty, which in my belief is God, as the origin of what is beautiful. But I don't know. I think that I'm just like longing for this philosophy of delight, and maybe you have thoughts on that.
You just laid out like 5 different things that we could talk for hours.
Yeah, I have to come back.
The relationship between Doxa and Aletheia, like that seems like we could talk about that forever. Using God to enjoy the unglamorousness of the everyday life. I'd love to poke at you at that, but then getting here. Oh, you said the ultimate, that which is most beautiful, the ultimate good would be God, and it seems to be like definition, at least in potential. It seems to be by definition, and then using, and then delight as opposed to like contrasting Alcibiades versus Socrates. I think that's Nietzsche's criticism. So. So there's a whole lot we could discuss there. I have
to read up some more Nietzsche.
but even then, at the very end, where you're getting at beauty in life helps you make the anagogical ascent to that which is most beautiful. That seems like that's a Catholic argument.
Probably. If I were to pigeonhole my person of faithhood, I would be an uneasy Protestant because I see these things in like the Catholic faith. I was like Protestant, but you know, these things in the Catholic faith and the Orthodox faith that I'm so drawn to, and I find missing in my own. But again, that's a whole other story for another time. But yeah, okay.
Right, thank you
so much. This is great.
Thank you ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed that conversation with Mrs. Kate Spanos, then you will enjoy this conversation with her husband, Mr. Nate Spanos, right here. Otherwise, you can check out this conversation with Hannah Honey right there. It's up to you.